Audio Unleashed.
I keep trying to turn this phone down, but I can't figure out how to turn it down.
I don't know if I would have admitted that, but I think you're showing your age a little bit.
These damn phones. I sound like my mother.
Yeah. Get off my lawn.
Accurate impression of my mother.
No, it's not.
In the tone of it is accurate, but not the sound of it.
There you go. It's evocative, but not accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, man. You are erudite. Topics.
Topics.
Are you?
Yes.
No, you're talking about the first one. Go.
I'm talking about the first one. So yeah, we're talking about another article from John Darko called "The Great DAC Distraction." What is with the emojis in his headlines these days? He's got another spicy pepper in the headline. So I guess it's "The Great DAC Distraction Spicy Pepper" is the headline, or do you read? Right. Do you pronounce the emoji? That's the question I need answered. So anyway, this is the 13th in a series of 15 observations from 15 years of audio writing. We've talked about a few of these, but basically Darko's premise here is like every year there's a new DAC that is going to save hi-fi. Should there be? Like, are DACs really going to save hi-fi? And I think you could probably imagine where Darko's going with this, and you could probably imagine why we're talking about it. But we're going to dig a little deeper into it and what he's talking about and what he recommends, and then what are we going to talk about?
Then we're going to have a very special guest, David Chesky, who is a renowned audiophile producer, audiophile record label head, and composer as well, and jazz artist. Guy kind of does everything.
Yeah.
And he does it. He the things I attempt to do, he succeeds at. And anyway, so we did a special project with David. He called me up, I don't know, 8 months ago or something, and wanted to do, he and I had done a headphone test album, and he wanted to do a speaker test album. So I've been working on, it's a long process. We come up with plans and we talk about it, and I try different things, and we see what works and what doesn't. But one of the smart moves we made this time was that we hired Dennis Berger of the Audio Unleashed podcast to do the voiceover. And that part, I know that part of it's really good. The rest, you'll have to judge for yourself. But we're going to talk to David about what was he trying to do with this thing. I'll chip in a little bit with what I was trying to do, et cetera, et cetera. And that's it. And also, we're going to have a special discount code in there for Audio Unleashed listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And wrapping it up for most people this week, we've talked about Herb Reichert's Gramophone Dreams column for Stereophile quite a few times, but the latest one is interesting. We're going to kind of skip the first half of this Gramophone Dreams, which talks about the live, I think that's how you pronounce the company's name, L.A. It's capital L, capital A, lowercase I, capital V. I think it's pronounced live, but I may be wrong about that. But
Dennis, move on.
Okay.
I don't care about some amp that some guy made that Herb is listening to.
Anyway, we're going to skip that. We're going to talk about his experiences with the Record Dr. 6, which is interesting because I think this is probably the only product that both I and Herb Reichert will ever own like simultaneously. So he talks about his experience with record cleaning machines, and then he talks about his pre-experiences even before he had a record cleaning machine, how he cleaned them when he was a kid. But then he talks about this Record Dr. 6, which again is one of the first things that I purchased after getting a turntable. And we're going to talk about his experiences, what he found, and what difference it made with his record listening.
Yeah, and yours.
Yeah, and mine. There you go.
And then for Patreon people, we're going to have a special segment on the Revel has announced a new Performa 4 loudspeaker line, which is debuting at Expona, I think a couple days from when we are recording this. So it'll be already out by the time you listen to this. And I felt this certain kinship for this because I owned one of the speakers in the Performa 3 line, and I tested, I think everything in the line. And maybe not the subwoofer, but who cares? But I actually did. I knew all the guys at Harman that were working on this, and I lived only a few miles away, and so I went to use their lab and hear it, and I did so much testing with this thing. But now there's a new version for the first time in 13 years or something, and there's a new one. This thing I think set a standard for sort of technically perfect performance at a not crazy price. And we're going to talk about what the new one does that's different. And it's different because the people, for the most part, the people that worked on the old series are no longer at Harman, which has been through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about what they did different with this speaker and what some of the changes at Harman have been, and what we think might happen with this thing, and what we think the reaction to it might be. All sorts of stuff.
Yeah. So let's talk about Darko, man. Let's dive in. Because again, this is basically, like we said in the intro, this is a series that Darko's been working on for a while. I guess he's close to the end now. So 15 observations from 15 years of audio writing, and this is number 13. Let me just read the intro because I think it's interesting. Okay. He says, every year a new DAC arrives to save hi-fi, and every year the loudspeakers stay where they are in an untreated room driven by a suboptimal amplifier. I don't know if I agree with all that, but whatever. He's trying to tell a story here. Let Darko tell a story. And he says, I've been beating this drum a lot, but basically I think if you just had to condense this article down to like one salient pitch, it would be the DAC is probably the least important part of your system these days. And I think where I would go that maybe Darko wouldn't go is that DACs are just a commodity at this point. And I think as long as you spend more than $50 on a DAC, it's probably technically perfect,
Pretty close.
But anyway, why'd you put this in the idea board? Because you threw this one in. Well,
I think it demonstrates an attitude that's happening more and more in audio journalism and maybe among audiophiles. There used to just be this sort of general acceptance that, this new DAC better than the old DAC, right? And because digital was bad once, and now it just keeps getting better. And I'm not saying it maybe wasn't, and there were certainly, I can certainly remember, good DAC chips became available for cheap 30 years ago, or maybe 28 years. I remember a manufacturer chatting with me and saying like, this DAC chip is like pretty much state of the art, and it was just some trivial amount of money. And I will say that analog to digital is a different story, because a lot of that, on the professional side, maybe you're fine there because that's a cost insensitive for the most part. But like the ADC chips that were in a lot of really cheap receivers and stuff back when receivers would take analog signals and convert them to digital, do the processing, convert them back to analog, the ADC stage was pretty weak in a lot of cases. I still remember doing some blind tests of those where it's like, that sounds bad. Although with the DACs, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But anyway,
right.
So I love though that John is kind of leading the way here. He's not saying DACs are all the same. What he's saying is the differences nowadays are so small that it's the part of the system that you shouldn't be worrying about. This is not going to transform your system.
Right.
Whereas, he's been banging the drum for, especially room treatment, but also for speakers, like deal with your speakers, deal with your room treatment, and everything else is a distant second. Not like, that's important too. He's just like, no, it's really not.
Yeah.
And
Especially in this day and age when like a lot of the DACs that are just built into integrated amplifiers or whatever, I mean, a lot of them give you like 2 or 3 reconstruction filters to play with. And in my opinion and in my experience, the reconstruction filter is 99.9% of the difference in performance between any two given DACs. Like whether you can hear the difference or not, if there is a measurable difference between them, it is largely going to be in the reconstruction filter. So if you've got a good integrated amp that gives you, a technically correct, sort of sharp roll-off linear phase filter, and also like a slow roll-off minimum phase filter or something like that, play around with those, you're probably going to get the experience of upgrading to a very expensive, outboard DAC if you even,
and let's face it, it does not cost money to change these filters around either.
No.
It's not like you have to go spend thousands of dollars to get, unobtainium capacitors or something to do this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is in the digital domain. Okay. So I love though that he says, if you want a reliable sign that a reviewer or anyone posting on a forum or in a Facebook group hasn't yet grasped where the DAC sits on the hi-fi wedge, it's this. They'll describe the difference between two DACs as quote unquote night and day, or claim one quote unquote destroys the other. And this, I think this is actually this is what hooked me. This is what set the hook. To use a fishing analogy. And which, you guys are into fishing down south, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm from the Seattle area. They fish up here too. Just the fish are bigger.
That's a good point.
But anyway, I love this because I've just so often fought. I mean, for more than a decade, I've been fighting, online commenters who are, you say one thing about, I don't know, some DAC, right? Which is a very good DAC, measures good, sounds good, everything's great. And the guy will say, oh no, the something or another smokes that one. It's like, what was your testing method? You had no method for testing. Your testing was cited and your levels were not matched. And it didn't matter what the results were. You decided in advance, whether consciously or unconsciously, that this one was better than that one, right? It's completely because of your bias, not because of anything you're judging, because in an ABX test, you can't tell the difference between the two. And in an AB test, maybe, but it won't be much.
Monty Montgomery demonstrated, ages ago that and at that point he was using a DAC that was like 10 years old and like not state of the art, just like a reasonably affordable DAC.
Yeah.
And it could perfectly reconstruct the waveform, right? And he showed this by going through cycles of D to A, A to D, D to A, A to D. And he's like, this DAC is perfectly recreating the waveform. If that is the case, like what else do you want a DAC to do? Now, you may have an answer to that question, right? You may have an answer. Oh, I want it to sound like this, or I want it to give it this flavor, whatever. But if that's the case, then what you're chasing is not an accurate DAC, right? You're chasing something with flavor, and at that point, I mean, you're just sort of like, it's so subjective that then how could you say that your experience with this DAC is going to translate to anybody else's experience with that DAC? If you're not using accuracy as a yardstick, then what yardstick are you using?
Yeah, although to be fair, how can you be sure that like almost anything in a subjective high-end audio review is going to translate to your own perception?
Well, no, that's true. But I'm saying conceptually here, we know we can prove that very, very, very affordable DACs can perfectly recreate the waveform, right? If perfection is attainable from very affordable gear, then what are you getting from the more expensive gear? And I'm not saying there's no answer to that question. I'm just saying it puts things in perspective, and hopefully makes you think a little bit more about whether or not there's any merit to a, $100,000 DAC or what have you.
Well, then you own something that costs $100,000.
It's a good point.
I mean, what's the merit to a lot of things that cost $100,000.
Yeah.
So I think, but I mean, you get the joy of owning it. That's fine if that's what you want to
Mhm.
do. I mean, and look, those things look way cooler
Yeah.
if you buy the whoever DAC, Constellation Audio, I guess, or some of these really expensive companies. You will probably enjoy owning that more than you would a FiO DAC or
Mm.
one of these other companies that makes a very good DAC for a few $100s.
Sure. You know what my favorite part of this article was, honestly?
What's that?
And this is subjective, but it's important that it's subjective. I love the list that Darko put together by year from 2016 to
Oh, me
2026.
too. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
sort of lists the darling DAC of that year. And he admits this is not based on sales figures because I don't have access to that. And it's not based on strict launch dates, but it's, Darko's been in the industry for, all that time and he's been observing. And I think he's got some credibility to say, yeah, this is kind of the hot DAC of that year. This is the DAC that everybody was talking about. And I just found it really interesting to compare and contrast them, and sort of see the MSRP go up and down and the technology change, but not really not in a progressive way. There's nothing in this list that makes me go, oh yeah, they're getting better all the time. It's just sort of fashion.
It is. And there's buzz around these, and you can get a buzz, I guess, dopamine from buying the DAC that's like the DAC of the year.
Yeah.
And that's all. And this has been true in high end. Harry Pearson of the Absolute Sound was constantly accused of being the chairman of the Amp of the Month Club, right? It's like every month there was a new amp. This is a quantum leap beyond what we tested last month. And this is kind of the same thing. It's like all these DACs are fine, and some of them are cheap, and some of them here's $249 for the Audio Quest Dragonfly 1.0.
Yeah.
But then some of them are $6,000 for the PS Audio Direct Stream Mark 1. The DCS Bark Talk is $13,500. And I mean, hey, look, man, there's a lot of people that have a lot of money, and there's a lot more people that don't. But there are a lot of people that have a lot of money. Otherwise, DCS wouldn't make a $13,000 DAC, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's buying that. They're not just making it for kicks,
Yeah.
Somebody's buying these things, and they're getting joy out of buying these things, and that's fine, whatever.
Yeah.
I just get mad at the guys on forums, and since I don't go on those forums much, it's more like the people that jump in on articles I write, and they're going, "Oh, you got to hear the Denafrips DAC. It smokes the whatever Chord Mojo or something, right?" And, and that's the whole thing is since these guys have no testing process, other than totally subjective, which is no different from like what's your favorite color at that point. Actually not even that good, because you can reliably distinguish between colors.
Oh man, I didn't think about it that way. It's a good point. It's a really good point.
I mean, it's like most of us can tell red from blue. I mean, unless you're colorblind, most of it, you can tell red from blue. Whereas
I'm sorry, my dad is colorblind and he can tell red from blue. He just can't tell red from green. Yeah. So
wow, I don't think dogs can tell red from blue. No, they probably can't, because red's one of the few colors they can actually see.
Yeah.
No, they can't. I'm sorry. No, they can't see red, because I was joking with my neighbor Katie that she painted her house red, and I said their dog Scamp's not going to be able to see it now.
Nice.
Well, she'll see something. It'll just be gray.
Yeah.
Anyway, she seems to find the house just fine. Anyway, so
probably by smell.
I loved all these DACs that he listed here. It just makes you look at this like, oh, that was the Hot Buzz DAC then, and it was $300. And the next year, the Hot Buzz DAC was $11,500. And then next year it was $650. And it just shows the randomness of these sort of judgments, and how there's not, and yeah, there's a lot of, all these DACs have something special about them, some kind of technology that's in them, or it's a new price low for this technology or something like that. And so there's something to get excited about, but there's something for your, the hand that holds your credit card to get excited about, not for your ears to get excited about.
I wonder what W. David Marks would say about this.
I know what he would say about it.
Yeah.
And who is W. David Marks? Please enlighten us.
Yeah, he's the author of Status and Culture. He wrote an entire book about, these sort of arbitrary fashions and sort of how they're formed and what it says about society at large. And, how every one of these things is often a status thing. So,
yeah. It's status, and you can get on audio forums and say, I own the Grimm Audio MU2 because I care about music.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of music, you want to go listen to some and get a drink of water and come back and talk to David Chesky?
That sounds good. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do that. And we'll be right back, y'all.
Welcome back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
That doesn't sound like Dennis.
I was supposed to do it. I thought you were.
That's it. That's it. That's perfect. No, you did it right.
Yeah,
you did it right. You followed the show conventions, and because you're David Chesky and you're good at following convention.
Absolutely.
You're Brent Butterworth and you're good at making sarcasm.
I am. So we have on as our very special guest, David Chesky, who is the head of the Audiophile Society, which, can I describe that as a record label?
Yeah, it's a record label.
Okay. It's a record label for, with audiophile releases. And the occasion that we're having him on today for, well, we would normally anyway, but we actually have done a joint project with David, which is called the Audiophile Society. What did we end up calling it? It's a speaker test album, but we kind of put some superfluous.
Yeah, well, it's plural. It's plural. It's the Audiophile Society. Amazing, fantastic.
Fabulous, not fantastic. Amazing, fabulous, magnificent speaker test and system optimization album.
He can slate it. Here we go. Slate that. The name of the record.
Okay.
Because I won't remember it. I can't remember anything.
I can't either.
Hey, I'm the voice of this album, so I had to remember, man.
You should remember it.
So I should say that this was David's idea, and David came to me a year and a half ago wanting to do a headphone test album, which we did, which I think did pretty well. We were pretty happy with it. And so he wanted to do a speaker test album, which I was really excited about because, I started my career using, this sort of audio test albums from, Stereophile and Stereo Review and whoever knows, so many different ones out there. And I was excited to do a whole new one that's completely updated for the year 2026. And Dennis, we drafted to do the voiceover.
Yeah,
because he has a good voice. So, David, what was the goal of all this?
Hey, Dennis, are you a professional voiceover guy? That's your gig?
I am now because you paid me to do the voiceover for this one. So technically, yes, I'm a professional voiceover artist.
You sound like one of those cats,
Yeah, this was my first paying gig for voiceover. So thank you.
Really? Okay, awesome.
So why'd you want to do this, David? Did you have what inspired this?
Well, here's what inspired it. A lot of audiophiles spend a fortune on these test gears. I'm also a pianist. I play around the world and I get invited to these really nice houses where people have these $1 million systems and they sound horrendous because they're not set up properly.
Yeah.
And so my thing was, why don't we make a test disc and people could use it to calibrate their speakers, test their speakers, and get the maximum amount of music out of their system? Because most of it just bounces off the room and et cetera, it never hits your ears.
Yeah. And so you've been involved with a lot of different test discs over the years, including, I mean, we worked on one when I was at Dolby, God, 25 years ago or something. And you had others before that, which I used to use all the time when I was like the editor of Home Theater Magazine and stuff. All of those were a long time ago. And so what did you want to do? How did you want to change it relative to what has been done before?
Well, as time goes by, we learn a lot more about, the genre of high-end audio. So we made tests that are more applicable, a little more sophisticated, and dialed in for a modern hi-fi system.
So do you have a particular listener in mind do you have like a target audience or a target customer, or, who buys your stuff is basically the question I'm asking you.
Person who can afford $25. Let's cut to the chase. Here's who buys it. Look. Listen, I had a label, Chesky Records. I sold it. Now I want to do, here's the thing. I want to do recordings. With Chesky was about space, three-dimensionality. And now I'm into a phase of my life where I want to do even more space, but with better tonality. So I have this new label, the Audiophile Society, and the aim is to get rid of that out of high-end audio. Most microphones are condensers, they're tambourines, and they ring, they're bright, and like that. So we're using a different system now. We've gone to all ribbons. We have custom-made tube microphones, and I've developed some proprietary things to get us out of the 60-degree triangle. Now, look, whatever people want to do is okay, recording engineers, just like like restaurants. Some guys want to do French food. Some guys want to make disco records on a board. Some people want to do EDM. Some people want to do jazz records. Some people want to go to a church with one microphone. It's all good. It's just different because it's aesthetics. Where I am aesthetically now is when I listen to a voice real, it doesn't have this high frequency sits. I want to capture a great tonality, okay? Now, when a guy like Sonny Rollins practices his entire life to play the saxophone, it's his tone. The tone is the poetry of music. So I want to capture that tone, that essence. I don't want to have all the hyper detail. High-end audio today is becoming like fluorescent colors. It's really bright.
Yeah.
It hits you, but it's not that. If I look at my shirt, in real life, it's more pastels, but I can see all the detail right now without anything hitting my eye. It's not hyped. It's real. It's real resolution, not apparent resolution. And we've moved away now from real resolution to apparent resolution where systems are bright, really hyper, etchy. Now, that's okay if you want that aesthetic because it's sort of like a guy who's a Dutch flower painter looking at a Jackson Pollock and saying, hey, man, what is this about? The thing is, in art, they're both valid. But I have picked now at my stage of life to go down the path of complete naturalism. When you play this new Audiophile Society records in your home, it should sound like the orchestra's in front of you. It shouldn't sound like coming out of speakers. The sound should extend from beyond the speakers, three-dimensional, very holographic, and you're immersed in it. So we can get out of that 60-degree triangle. You have the 60-degree triangle. We can get way past it, and we have this immersive wall of sound. So that is what we're trying to do in this new company of mine.
David, I really like how ecumenical you are, and you're talking about, you don't have anything against people who are mostly into EDM or what have you, any of these other genres. But I guess the question that I would have for you is, let's say you've got a listener who is primarily into EDM or some other form of music and music recordings that don't necessarily aesthetically align with what you're doing. Do you still feel like there is value for them in this disc as a test setup disc? And if so, why?
Absolutely. You want to hear the music that's on the disc, not what's bouncing around your room. It's simple as that. If you have an EDM record and the bass is whatever it is, you don't want less bass or more bass. You want exactly the amount of bass that's on that record. If you're hearing a snare drum, you want to hear the transient of the snare drum, not the first reflection off your wall. If the speakers are too close to the wall, that early reflection comes at 3, 4, 5 milliseconds. The brain can't decipher the reflection from the initial recording, so you have this comb filtering, you have this blur. So the idea is if you're listening to Bach, or if you're listening to Lady Gaga, or if you listen to EDM, you want to hear exactly what's on that disc, what that engineer producer team created, not what your home enhanced. I'll give you a radical example.
Okay.
If we took the greatest stereo system in the world and put it in St. Paul's Chapel, it would be unlistenable. You really understand. It can be so radical. People say, it's so much room. I just hear the swimming sound. So take that concept and stick it in your home. It's not St. Paul's with a 6, 7, second delay, but there's still things going on that destroy the sound in the same way. But that's a radical example that people can wrap their heads around.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about the different tests that we have on here. And which Dennis can jump in on too, because we did this, you and I consulted on it, and then I talked to Dennis about it, and I talked to a variety of other people about it too, and got their suggestions. Different people in the industry and a couple of speaker guys, and I talked to like Van Dickinson about it, who's the author of the Loudspeaker Design Cookbook, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have some pretty normal things on here, just the basic sort of phase tests and channel balance tests and things like that will, make sure that your system's working right in the first place before you even start to try to optimize it, which is really important because a lot of systems are not working right in the first place. But we have a lot of kind of unusual tests on here that are probably the most interesting thing to me. Is we have a lot of plain straight instrument tests as opposed to just a bunch of music where you listen to it, you go, oh yeah, nice music. We have things like a cymbal or organ bass pedals, which, go down to, I think 16 hertz or something like that. So you can get like these super, super, super deep tones that you normally would not get on. The only test disc I know of that has that is the old Boston Audio Society one from, like 35 years ago or something. And so it has a lot of these tones on there that are natural, and people, I think, have a sense of what they should sound like, but it's on there so that, you can play a cymbal, and so many systems mess up. I mean, I think you would agree, David, so many systems just mess up the sound of cymbals. Either they make them too, or they dull the sound of them. And
well, look, that's an aesthetic. See, the danger here. See, I used to be like this. I was a fascist. And I'd say, I have a stereo microphone. I like to go into church and record exactly what I hear. And I said the whole world should be like me. But then I have friends of mine that play in big rock bands, and they say, hey, David, the sound of that MP3 distortion is my thing. That's my sound. So you can go in the church and record all the reverb you want. I'm going to make all the distortion I want. And then the epiphany said that I realized, in aesthetics, it's, it's in the eye of the beholder. So this is getting back to this point. This disc is a reference. So scientifically, that 1 is 1 and 0 is 0 and 5 is 5. Then once that is established, then the music you like to listen to, will be scientifically as close as you can. The reason is 2 things. First of all, there's a few reasons about this thing. Aesthetically, I think as the population gets older, I don't know, maybe audiophiles, they like that rising top end. It makes me crazy, but they like it. It's also an aesthetic sound. People want the ting, ting, ting. Cymbals don't sound like, look, I play in a jazz trio. Sit next to a drummer all the time. Cymbals are very burnished and rich. I never hear that top end live that I hear on a recording, and I'm not sticking my head 2 inches from the cymbal either, where most people mic it. But the problem is that's not real. It's an artificial aesthetic, and that's okay, but it's an artificial aesthetic, and that's not my thing. So the idea of the test disc is let's establish a baseline. Once the baseline's established, you can play that Tizzy record. And if you like the Tizzy record, it's your prerogative. And you know it's Tizzy, not because of your system, but it's Tizzy because that's the sound the engineer and the producer wanted.
Exactly.
The bad thing is if they have a record and it's not Tizzy and you play it at home and it is Tizzy, then that's a problem.
So how do people get this? How can you, what is this thing? What medium is it on? And how do you order it?
Well, you can go to the audiophilesociety.com and download it. I like downloads. I know it's very fashionable to all these other mediums, but I like high resolution downloads. So basically it's accurate, and you just download it. You get bit for bit, perfect copy of the album.
2448.
Yes,
and
we mostly do it 192.24 or DSD, but we did 48.24 because the idea is we want to get it to a larger, population than the slim audio files, and everybody can play 48.24. A lot of people can't play 192, and it's downsampled in your dash. We don't know, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, the other great thing about doing 48.24 instead of like 192 is you don't know if the user system has got like intermodulation distortion problems too. So 48.24, you don't have to worry about that as much, but 192.24, you could be introducing some IMD.
And this is only a download, not available as a disc or anything like that, right?
Yeah, maybe later we'll put it out as a CD. We'll see what the initial buzz is.
And we should say we have, what are we doing? We're doing like a 25% off download code for Audio Unleashed listeners.
Yeah, we've got a code here.
Dennis, where is that code? You're the brains behind the operation. Where's this code going to be?
I'm going to put it in the show notes, but it's really easy to remember. It's all one word, Audio Unleashed 25. The A and the U are capitalized, and that's going to get you 25% off of one-time purchase of this album.
Okay. And you'll hear Dennis guiding you through the whole, it's actually kind of it's not just like there's all these tones on there, because in between all the tones, there's voiceover from Dennis that we worked on a lot. We really kind of worked out a script on this. And everything is thoroughly explained, which I think has not been the case on most test discs. So you don't have to know anything about audio to actually use this thing. If you do, so much the better. And you can, of course, skip the voiceover if you want.
I learned some things doing it, like Leader. I wasn't familiar with the listening environment diagnostic recording for the spatial audio stuff. That was new to me, and I was like, "What is this? This is neat." So I learned something from doing this.
And we have something on there that I came up with and Dennis helped me with, which is a noise floor test. And there's so much talk about SINAD, signal to noise and distortion. Nowadays, because the audio precisions and stuff can measure that, and some Audio Science Review makes a big deal of that when they're testing DACs and stuff. So I had to confess, I kind of didn't really know what minus 100 dB or whatever SINAD meant, and so we decided to do these test tones where Dennis does a voiceover at an average level of like minus 20 dB full scale, and it just keeps stepping down. So you can hear what, minus 80 dB sounds like. Well, maybe you can hear it. That's for you to find
at
out.
That point, you're going to probably need headphones,
Yeah, but it really gives you, because the thing, there's no exemplar of what these things sound like, and now we've given people an idea. And for me, that's my favorite part of the disc right there. Besides the fact that we have music at the end of this, which David produced, right?
Yes. And there are recordings, a little sampler to see if you like.
And cool. So how did you produce these? These are with the ribbon microphones?
Yes, the majority of our records,
you're calling this mega-dimensional sound, right?
Yeah, it's mega-dimensional sound. Look, it's nothing fancy. It's just that we live in a world of the 60-degree triangle. Look, head transfer. Let's go to the chase. I've been working at Princeton with Dr. Shueri for like 15 or 20 years on this Bach system. We were doing the binaural recordings, and he takes the Bach system, which cancels the crosstalk. When you hear that back and your ears match the pinna of the dummy head, you are in a real three-dimensional holograph. It's mind-blowing because, look,
it is.
Surround sound is like having a hula hoop around you, okay? It's there. Bach and crosstalk cancellation done with binaural recording could put things like those little Russian dolls. It's spherical. So you can put something by your nose here, farther back, a foot back, 10 feet back, 10 feet over your head. You can play sound. And that is how we hear. We don't hear in 5.1. We hear in spherical surround, okay? Now, the next thing is, you can't hear that on recordings because you have interaural crosstalk corruption. And the brain, it's like, we're talking about comb filtering if your speaker is next to the wall. Your brain, when you hear this back, when you hear an orchestra, guy on the left side whacks the bass drum, right? The bass drum comes and hits your left ear, goes around your nose and hits your right ear, okay? Two things happen. It takes longer to get to your other ear. So the brain figures out the time difference and the level drops. So the level and the time is enough for the brain to say, in the old days, there's a bear 100 meters behind me on my right and I better run. And that is how we're geared. We are so hardwired. Now, this is the interesting thing. When you listen to a normal stereo recording, the sound is all around you, but you cannot hear it because of the interaural crosstalk corruption. You can sit there the rest of your life and you cannot hear it because we're so hardwired. Now, if you want to validate this in the visual world, go on this thing and look at the McGurk effect, okay? And the McGurk effect is there's a guy saying ba, 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 ba. And when the guy says ba, they superimpose his lips saying ba. And you would swear that he's saying ba, even though he's saying ba, because the eye trumps the ear. And whatever the eye sees, they believe. And as soon as you close your eyes, he's saying the word ba, like a ba sheep. And as soon as you open your eyes, he's saying ba, because it's saying that. The lips are saying that. Now, the same thing we can transport it to the audio. We're so hardwired to not be able to hear outside the triangle of 60 degrees because of the corruption. Now, I told you just now, when you go to the symphony, the ear hears the left and right, and it has to travel around the nose. When you listen to a hi-fi system, your left ear hears the left and right speaker at the same time, and your right ear hears the left and right speaker at the same time. This is called brain fog. So the brain cannot decipher, and this is why you can't get sound outside the 60-degree triangle, okay? Now, the correct way to do this is to be able to have a system like Bach, like the BACC8 system, that can builds a filter, and the filter separates gets the crosstalk out, and then you can really hear holographic. It's amazing. But you need a decoder to do that. When I'm doing recordings, my thing is, what are those things that make us feel like we're in a room? What are the frequencies that make us feel like we're outside and all that? And then I interject those into my recordings and make it feel like it's much bigger than it is, while not distorting the sound stage or imaging or anything like that. So it's basically, we don't listen with our ears. We interpret the world. We don't hear it. So by understanding how we interpret the world, I guess as a magician, I can fool you into creating this big sound space, because it's an illusion anyway. Look, you're sitting in your house and there's two black boxes in front of you, right? There's no orchestra there, but we're going to create the illusion. However we create the illusion is valid. So that's the only thing. But I'm saying we need to do things to trick the brain in saying you're not in a room with two black boxes.
Boy, this is going to throw the trust your ears crowd into a tizzy.
Well, but it is trust your ears, because we're organisms. We're not measuring devices. This is why measurements really mean nothing. It's aesthetics. You know what I mean? If it sounds great, you know what? Let's do this. If somebody records a cello in a room and the room is bright and the cello is bright and you put it out as a recording, people will say it's a terrible recording because the human beings don't want a bright cello. They want their cellos to be rich like a wine. So if you equalize it to be rich, it's okay. So just as humans, there's certain things we don't like, even if it's the truth, in audio.
Yeah.
I think we don't like the region of 3 kilohertz because I think when a baby cries, you hear it instantly and it's an irritating thing.
Yeah.
We like lower mid-range. We like bass, right? Never too much bass. We like lower mid-range. We like, 150, 200, 180 hertz, getting that richness, lower mid-range, 400. We like this. We don't like boosted 3 to 8 kilohertz because it's irritating. We also like it when you tilt up 10K and above for the people that can hear it. We like that air, that tiz. So it's not reality. It's you're making a, what do you call it? A dinner for an audio experience. If I walked into a restaurant, I said, I'd like a fish. And the guy walked out and threw a fish on my plate and said, this is as fish as it's going to get. You would say, no, I want an artificial fish. I need salt. I need pepper. I need a wine sauce. I need peppercorns, et cetera, and it would be nice to cook it. So it's the same thing with audio. We're trying to deliver an aesthetic illusion in your home where you say, I just enjoy it. That's the only thing. The most important thing is that you enjoy the experience. The rest is nonsense.
And this album will, I hope, help people do that.
This album is not going to help you enjoy anything more. This album will make your system calibrated so when you're listening to something, it's accurate. It's sort of like, you know what? I like the speedometer on my car. If I'm going 40, not to say it's 70, we kind of want that. So I want to know that if my system is playing bass, it's the correct bass that's on the record, not added bass by corners. Okay. And if it's tizzy, I wanted to know the producer's tizzy and that's his intent, not because I have my speaker next to a glass wall, you know?
Okay.
David, I think we've about reached the end of our time here, but I wanted to ask you one more question. It's this speaker that's on the cover of the album it's a fascinating looking speaker. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, that's my son's speaker, Luca. It's funny that Luca, when he was in high school, went to the physics lab to work with Edgar and to do things on phase array. And when he was there on his off hours, he started messing around with 3D printing and the geometry of cabinet design and came up with this speaker. And he has the LC1 and LC2. It'll be at Exponent this week. But it's an interesting speaker because it's made out of a composite. And it also it's not like your normal MDF speaker. So it kind of disappears. And they're young people and they're looking at speaker design through a whole different lens. The concept of them building a box out of MDF and stuffing it is alien, because they're growing up, I guess, in a video world and a 3D printing world where they say, wait a second, why are we limiting ourselves to this? So it's a good speaker. I mean, what am I going to say? I'm his dad. So, but the thing is, he's getting all kinds of awards and people dig it. And we're going to be at the Vienna show this year, which is the former Munich show.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And
excellent.
It's good. And what he wants to do is give you good value for the money, because this $100,000 thing is out of it. And the other thing is this, we need to get young people into high-end audio. The coolest thing is this. When he has a system set up in his dorm at Carnegie Mellon, kids don't even know this exists. When we grew up, hi-fi was in every magazine, Playboy, this and that had ads for Pioneer, JVC was everywhere. You walk down the street with 100 hi-fi stores. It's an abstraction now. And it's an amazing hobby, and we need to pass it on to the next generation. So the reality is you need young designers, young company to get young people in, and they can afford $800 or $900 now. And maybe in 20 years, they'll afford a $50,000 system. But it worries me as I see it's like classical music. When I go to a concert, it's like, whoa, it's just we're the young people.
Yeah.
So that's something the industry needs to look at.
That's a whole other podcast episode right there. So maybe we'll bring you back to talk about that.
Yeah, how to get young people into this hobby.
Yeah. But for now, thanks for joining us, man. This has been a fascinating conversation, and thank you so much for letting me be part of the project. I really, really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. Every other podcast turned me down. They said, we don't want you to take a hike.
All right.
I said, Joe Rogan, don't you want to talk about high-end audio? He said, take a hike.
Wow. All right, Brent, anything else you want to throw in before we take a break and get a drink of water?
No, I'm good. Just thanks to David for coming on.
Awesome.
All right. We'll be right back, y'all. And welcome back. This is Audio Unleashed. Nice. You got that whole angine de poitrine thing going down, man. We need to get you like
taking over my life.
Yeah, we need to get you some kind of voice modulator where you don't have to put in the effort and wreck your vocal cords. We recorded an episode of the Soundstage Audiophile podcast this past week with Etienne Gauthier from Sim Audio, and he was just raving about the band. He's proud because they're from Montreal. So anyway, yeah.
I just saw a thing on Facebook or something where Alex Lifeson and Geddy Lee have inspired by them and also by those Gizzard Lizard guys you listen to.
Yeah.
They have actually gotten their Gibson and Fender to build them microtonal instruments.
Oh man, I love it.
Alex Lifeson got a microtonal double neck from Gibson.
Nice. I mean, man, this is just all the influence of Turkish psych rock just finally permeating into sort of Western society. And I'm absolutely here for it. So, yeah. But anyway, we're not here to talk about angine de poitrine today. We're here to talk about the latest installment of Herb Reichert's Gramophone Dreams column, which we seem to like dig into this column quite a bit. But
he gives us plenty to talk about.
That's true, he does. We're going to skip right over, I think, the first half of this, which is about the live GAN-M monoblock amplifier. And this is, you know what, you and I Babe Ruthed this back in the day with the Soundstage Audiophile podcast when GAN started coming into Class D, and we're like, look, this is going to give you some enhanced efficiency, and that's amazing. But like, once audiophiles, take the bait here, they're going to be claiming this is the second coming. And boy, I think we're seeing that play out here. But what else is there to say about this amp? There's not much to say about it. So we're going to scroll down about halfway down the page and actually talk about Herb's experiences with the Record Dr. 6 20th anniversary edition record cleaner, which, as I said before, I think is probably the only product that will ever be simultaneously owned by both me and Herb Reichert. You're the one that put this in the idea board, though. What, why this one stand out to you? Why you want to talk about a record cleaning machine, man?
Well, I was inspired to do this because I'm actually, in a couple hours, I'm recording a video for Wirecutter about record cleaning. And as a thing for Record Store Day, which is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And so, but I've heard you enthuse about your Record Dr. 6, and I thought you might want to talk about it.
Oh.
And because, I just have a spin clean. And I think I used one vacuum machine once, and it was nice, but I'm not as big of a vinyl guy, so it's not a good investment for me.
Yeah.
But you like it.
I love it, actually. And I reviewed also the Record Dr. X. I think they call it X instead of 10, but it's an X. I reviewed that as well for Soundstage some time back. And I think I did the only review of one of these things I've ever seen that actually involved microscope photography. So, because I was just like, Adam Somer, who's a PR professional and a dear old friend of ours, asked me, if I wanted to review them because, he heard me sort of raving about the record Dr. Six. He was like, "Do you want to review the X?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, but like, how do you review one of these things? I mean, do you just like clean your records and then go, ooh, they sounded cleaner?" I mean, there's always going to be some subjective impressions when you're doing one of these sort of things, but it's like, I wanted to test it out. I wanted to see, is there a demonstrable, measurable difference between the performance of the Six and the X, which the Six is just, there's a vacuum on the, one side. You sort of wash your record and then you flip it over and use the felt covered vacuum to sort of like suck the cleaning fluid out of it. And then you wash that side and flip it over and suck it again. The Record Dr. X is actually dual-sided. It's got an arm that comes out, and so it's vacuuming both sides of the record at the same time. And plus, it's got a motorized platter, so where you don't have to spin it by hand. But buddy, both of them got the record absolutely pristine. And I threw a softball at it, right? Actually, my first real test was I had bought a copy of Al Di Meola record. Which one was it? The Splendido Hotel, I think I picked up. And literally as I was in the record shop, Travis, the owner of Village Green Records, put it through ultrasonic cleaner, right? And then re-sleeved it for me. And he re-sleeved it in paper sleeves, which I do polyline sleeves only. But I got it home, put it on the record player, and it started, popping and ticking. And I was like, oh. Pulled out the microscope that I had bought for this review and looked, and there were just bits of paper, flecks of paper, all in the grooves. And so did a quick wash and vacuum, put it on the record player or turntable, and it sounded utterly pristine. But I mean, if you look at the difference between the Record Dr. X and the Record Dr. Six, they both clean the gunk out of the grooves perfectly. So are you just really, really lazy? No, then get the Record Dr. Six. You're going to save a ton of money and you're going to have fun cleaning your records. Because I actually enjoy cleaning my records. That's part of the sort of like, I think I've said this to you before, but to me, not being a true believer in this sort of sonic superiority of vinyl, to me, my experience with records is sort of like tea ceremony, like Japanese tea ceremony. It is the ceremony of it that matters to me, right? It is the inconvenience, to sort of quote that old New Yorker cartoon. And part of the process for me that I really, really love is just cleaning my records before I listen to them.
Honestly, I have gone through much more of a vinyl phase, and because I used to be the turntable reviewer for Sound and Vision.
Yeah.
And not because of any great skill, just Al Griffin. Al Griffin needed somebody who could get the copy in on time, and he knew I wouldn't screw it up too bad. So I did I got sick of it because my hands are humongous, and changing cartridges for me is really difficult. So and I broke a couple leads and things like that. I'm just like, I'm sick of this. But I used to have a whole lot of records. I used to really haunt the record stores a lot. And our old friend Gordon Soak from Canada, the guy who used to own Innovative Audio, vintage audio store, he
wait, I didn't know he didn't own it anymore. He sold the shop?
Yeah, he sold it. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. He is retired. I mean, he's still messing around a little bit, but he's retired. Anyway, so he was at my house in LA, and he's like, "Man, you got a lot of decent records here." I'm like, "Yeah, but I never play them anymore. You want them?" He's like, "Yeah." So he was going to fly back, but he rented a car.
Wow.
And loaded all these records up in the trunk of the car, and the car was sagging down. But anyway, I used to be much more into this, and I used to go, and I don't like to go buy the collector's edition, this and that. And I don't like to, I like to buy new records when I can find decent deals on them. But like some of these records are so expensive. And so I would go to, I would buy them at flea markets and garage sales. And sometimes, a lot of stores will put a lot of dollar records out in front and stuff. Plus, a lot of the records I want are, weirdo jazz things that are $1 anywhere, $2 that nobody wants. Right. And so A lot of those were filthy. I remember I got a Lee Morgan record, which I'd never seen before, and the cover was all beat up, and there was no sleeve on it, but the vinyl actually looked like it was in decent shape, but it literally had like mud, like dirt, like it looked like it had been in a flood or something. And which a lot of old vinyl has been in a flood.
Might have been, yep.
and so I mean, it was unplayable, but I cleaned that off. It was great. So I would just buy a bunch of sort of junky old records that were in good shape, but hadn't been taken care of. Right. And I would clean them, but I would only clean them once, and so a spin clean was fine for me. I mean, if I got really back into vinyl, which could happen. I don't know. I don't think so, but it could. I would buy a record Dr. Six right away. I mean, I was really close to buying one anyway, because I'm like, I'm kind of, because if you have a spin clean, you have the cloths that they provide with it, and they're very absorptive, but they get wet really fast.
Yeah.
And
with a record doctor, you take the thing off the cleaner and put it on your turntable like immediately.
Yeah.
So,
and with the spin clean, I ended up, you wipe them down, but then they're still pretty wet, and I would lean a whole bunch of them against my couch and things, and they'd be like leaning against everything in my living room, and it was a pretty big living room, but I clean like 15 records or something.
Yeah.
And I have all these records leaning around. And of course, they're picking up more dirt that way, or more dust. And so it was great for if I just wanted to do a couple of records, right? But it was kind of not great for someone who really spends a lot of time in record stores. This is way better, and you don't have the mess. And then the water, the moisture actually, it goes into like a little thing in the bottom, right?
Yeah, a little reservoir. And what's interesting is they give you a little tap at the bottom. That's sort of like if you're going to clean like 30 records today, right? You're probably going to have to go and like put this thing over a sink and like drain the cleaning fluid out of it. But the funny thing I found is if you're cleaning one or two records, honestly, the heat of the motor for the vacuum sort of evaporates the liquid anyway. So it's like I've been using this thing for close to 2 years now.
Yeah.
I think I've had to empty it like once, because honestly, like the heat of the machine itself sort of like gets rid of, and it's not a super ton of liquid. You're just putting enough liquid on your record to give it a good scrub, to make sure, it's got a surfactant in it. You want to get down into the grooves and rub them really well. But you're using a few drops of liquid at a time. So again, unless you're cleaning a ton of records, you don't have to drain this thing much.
So let me ask you a question. So Herb says, and I think this is a bit of a controversy, Herb says he tried cleaning some brand new records. And he found that they were indeed a little bit better after he cleaned them. Do you agree with that?
I do not agree with that. I actually have found that new records, in my experience, personally, can benefit the most from cleaning, because they've got...
Oh, really?
They've got this...
So you agree with Herb?
Well, I don't think Herb goes far enough, actually. So, I'll give you one perfect example. Like, long before I bought a turntable, long before I had any intention of buying a turntable, I'm a huge fan of the musical Wicked. And I had bought the 2LP vinyl release when it first came out, just because I wanted a display piece. I love this music so much. I love this musical. I wanted the big gatefold. I wanted the presentation, the package. Never intended to play it. But when I got my record player, I'm like, oh, I can listen to my, Wicked original Broadway soundtrack now. And, pulled it out of the wrapper. I literally cut the cellophane, like pulled it out, looked at it. It looked fine. I didn't see any dust or anything. Put it on my record player, dropped the stylus on it, and it sounded like you were dragging a rake through kitty litter, right? Wow. I mean, it was just, the surface noise was unbearable. And I thought, well, that's a record I'll never listen to. And then I got my record Dr. Six, and I thought that this record in particular would be one that would be good to use for doing photos for the review. And so I just cleaned it thinking, well, there's nothing to clean. It's a brand new record. And then I don't know why, but I just decided to put it on my record player again and drop the needle on it. And all of a sudden it sounded utterly pristine. And I think it was, again, just the sort of release agents or whatever stuff they do. I've never pressed records, so I'm talking out of my butt here a little bit. But yeah, I do not play a new record on my turntable without it having been cleaned by the Record Doctor 6 first, because sometimes it doesn't matter. Like if I buy something from, Verve or, like one of the audiophile labels, it's not a frequent thing to do, but like if I buy one of those, typically I can pull them out of the, wrapper and put them on and they sound fine. But anything that is sort of a mainstream pressing or anything like that, I have found that cleaning them just right out of the sleeve and just making sure to never re-sleeve them in paper makes all the difference in the world with regard to surface noise.
What about rice paper sleeves?
Ooh, I don't know, man. I found polyline sleeves are cheap and they work great. And so I don't need to explore that too much. I think the rice paper ones are a lot more expensive, aren't they?
I don't know. I've got a bunch in for Wirecutter right now. And honestly, I've never really investigated this. I had a bunch that I bought at some point and was using a lot. Yeah. But I don't remember what they were, and they seemed to be working fine. So I got them from, Needle, what was it called? Needle Doctor, a really good site that used to exist, a really good vendor that closed down, sadly.
Yeah.
But I'm exploring all this stuff now. So,
well, I really love, for outers, I love Sleeve Cities outers because, as you're sort of putting your records in and out of your shelf, the poly outers will get a little scuffed and dingy and get a little cloudy and things like that. And I found that Sleeve Cities outers just stay utterly pristine looking, and they're thick and they're clear and they're just really, really nice. So since I use their outers, I started buying their polylined inners, and they're just, they're cheap and they're great. And like, how much is it? I can't remember, but get polyline sleeves, people. Or, hey, maybe you'll test out these rice paper sleeves and they'll work great. All I know is my records do not touch paper after they've been opened for the first time, because the paper, just little bits of paper gets in the grooves. So
good to know.
Yeah.
If I ever get back into vinyl,
I'll send you pictures, man. Or maybe I'll put a link to my review in the show notes, and people can see my microscope images, and you could see like these tiny little flecks of paper in there. And then after they're bathed, there's nothing. And you can see, I did side 2 and side 4 of the same record, one with a 6 and one with an X, and you can see the difference. And it's just, again, they both come out pristine, so why would you bother with that? And it also makes me wonder, I've always thought, like when I bought the Record Doctor 6, I thought, well, this is training wheels. Like I will eventually get like an ultrasonic cleaner, because that's Valhalla, right? That's the end game,
Yeah.
Why do I need an ultrasonic cleaner if this thing is literally doing a perfect job? Plus, it dries the record, so I can immediately put it on my turntable.
See, and you have found common ground with Herb Reichert.
I have, man. Yeah.
What a beautiful day this is.
Kumbaya, my lord.
Yeah.
We need a drum circle now. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we move on?
Yeah, I think we have digressed enough. So we should probably do some credits, man, and get on to making our patrons happy.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. Well, as always, this is a Butterburger production.
It is.
Are we gonna have any new music this week? I haven't really been working on anything.
No, I'm buried in Wirecutter stuff right now.
Okay.
So.
Well, I'm mixing and mastering and editing and all that good stuff, so I'll pick some of my favorites from the Brent Butterworth archives.
I'll be curious to see what your favorites are. And I should say, actually, the album I did with Ron, which we kind of released, I guess, about a year ago, but now we decided to do like an official release with actual promo and stuff like that. It's getting really good reviews.
Oh, very nice.
And I'm kind of shocked.
Nice.
It's nice to hear people. That's why I'm kind of looking forward to see what music you pick. It's like, it's nice to hear what people think of your music.
Yeah. We should thank David Chesky for joining us and also remind people that if you want 25% off of the Audiophile Society Speaker Test and System Optimization album, which is a WAV download, we'll have a link to the product in the show notes, and you can use the code AudioUnleashed25 for 25% off. That's all one word, and the A and the U are capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Awesome.
Anything else?
Check it out.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
We have shamelessly promoted our stuff.
That is true.
Our job is done.
Our job is done. All right. Well, everybody, we'll see you in a couple of weeks, but patrons, stick around. We got one more for you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us, or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah. And so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.